Now on to our first session. And I think are we slightly ahead of schedule? Yeah, 2 minutes. On to our first session. We have Jaidev Kakar, Director of Advertiser Solutions at PubMatic, who will moderate the value and evolution of the programmatic session. So if the first panel could please come up and take your seats, that'd be great.
I've always got trouble with these mic things. And I'm quite sure I might stand up for this actually. Hello everyone and welcome. I'm sure most of you in the audience would probably agree with me when I say programmatic advertising has kind of transformed the way that we've bought and sold digital media online. And we've got an exceptionally talented panelists today, so I'm going to ask them all to introduce themselves. And when they do, if they can tell us what they feel is the biggest value of programmatic advertising and why we should continue investing in the media.
There we go. Yeah.
Now? Should I just speak a bit louder?
I can stand next to you.
Oh, amazing.
I think you might have to keep you.
I prefer you here.
Oh, you want me standing? Okay.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
The panelists to introduce themselves and just talk a bit about what you think is the largest value in programmatic advertising and why we should continue investing in this medium. Let's start with Alice first.
Hi, I'm Alice Beecroft. I work at Yahoo. I head up the DSP strategy and partnerships for EMEA. Apologies, I'm going to take the word that probably everybody wants to use. It has to be efficiency. The efficiencies and the ability for all brands to be able to access advertising, no matter how small or large their budget.
Hi, so Frank from Magnite. I lead our demand facilitation team for the UK and Nordics. So yeah, all of our kind of buy side, mostly agency relationships. For me, obviously coming from an SSP, it's all about ease of access to inventory, particularly when we've got emerging channels coming out, CTV growth, all of that. It's more important than ever that when we have an opportunity to bring that into traditional programmatic and truly plan in an omni-channel way and execute as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Paul Snook. I'm a senior programmatic sales manager at Samsung Ads. And I think the value, echoing what's already been mentioned, but how I see it, it's really about the efficiency, the ease of access to lots of different types of content and lots of different types of video formats and stuff. So I think that there's that kind of single access point where someone can just tap into lots of different ways of different ad formats and being able to have at their fingertips. And I think what's really going to drive investment through is, kind of programmatic's probably always been, has long been considered a performance channel. And I think now with the kind of onset of CTV inventory and out of home, really powerful brand building kind of formats, that kind of programmatic can now play in both areas of the pitch. So it's great for kind of performance, but also tapping brand building budgets as well. I think that's how kind of we're going to see budgets grow.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm from DoubleVerify. I head up our programmatic optimization team. So globally, look after our programmatic specialists. Yeah, in terms of, I think definitely echo the same points around access and efficiency that I think to add to that, it's really about programmatic space lets you layer more data to drive those elements as well. From our perspective, that can be looking at how you can layer your brand suitability, contextual targeting. Obviously, there's a lot of other data points, whether it's optimizing in that performance space or if it is these other levers that you can start pulling for more branding space as well. So I think, reiterating, as long as we continue to have access to all that data, they'll continue to see it being a channel that you can really invest in.
Right, so it seems like it's very efficient. Okay, so since the emergence of real-time bidding and the birth of programmatic, what do you feel are key elements of programmatic advertising that will continue to remain essential? So obviously, if I look at this with a online lens, we have explored and invested in multiple mediums such as SPO, transparency, CTV, retail media, etc., etc. And it's all with the end goal being to create this supply chain of the future for all our clients. But what are the actual elements in each part? So be it CTV or head of it, what is actually crucial for this to continue? So let's go with you, Frank, on this first.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned some of it yourself there. So I think the transparency is almost like a new element, but it's become so core to what we do, like whether that's buy side or on the supply side. So we as a platform now are, and always have been, completely transparent. We've got the vast majority of our publishers opted into fee transparency. I think on the commercial side, we're in a really great place now, particularly when you look at some of the studies that were done 3 to 4 years ago at the programmatic industry in general. like when it comes to SPO, it's not just about commercial transparency that's great, and it's not just a commercial benefit, but there's a huge kind of sustainability benefit there as well, right? And why are you buying through 100 different SSPs when actually you can access the inventory you need through 4 or 5? Far less energy consumption that's happening there, fewer bid requests, ad calls, bid responses, all of that, right? Far less data processing, and there's a huge benefit that we're looking to explore and how we can actually measure and capture that and improve upon it as well.
And Alice?
So I think the ultimate thing has got to be choice. Programmatic lends itself either from a publisher perspective when you've got header bidding in place, the fact that there's a choice from the demand side and in an efficient way. Equally from an advertiser side, the choice as to which data vendors, as to which measurement vendors, as to which brand safety vendors, as to which supply path they're actually using. But I think we all would be remiss to not talk about that sort of push-pull that's happening right now when it comes to header bidding having gone out there, and now suddenly we're all now talking about actually we should be actually focusing more on a direct path because it is more sustainable, etc. And arguably it's interesting that it was actually Brian O'Kelly that sort of brought header bidding more into the forefront, and now he's kind of like coming in with scope 3 in order to actually show that done in the right way you can still actually provide choice, but you can do it in a moral and ethical way. So
yeah, I agree. I think it seems to be working better now.
Yeah, I think it's very much down to choice and making that path more direct. So how do you think Programmatic has evolved over the last 1 to 2 years? What key advances have been made? So how's Programmatic enabled efficiencies within media channels such as CTV and audience? So, I guess Paul, you probably could cover the CTV angle.
Yeah, definitely. I can talk about the CTV angle from Samsung. So I think definitely Programmatic, we've seen it evolve as our media and kind of media consumption has evolved as well. So what we're seeing at Samsung is a real increase in streaming, and that's becoming a predominant way lots of households are choosing to watch their content. That's backed onto the kind of linear TV viewing. With streaming within the kind of EU region, Samsung households, so of households with a Samsung TV, about 20% of those are just choosing to stream content and kind of not watch any linear TV at all. So as a result of that, what we're seeing is a kind of a rapid increase in the marketplace of number of sort of CTV impressions that are available for sale. So we're seeing more and more kind of partners actually entering the marketplace. More CTV partners are actually building it. So before it was just say some of the big CTV apps, so like Pluto TV, TV Plus, Samsung's own fast AVOD offering, but also Rakuten. But now I think there's a much broader kind of layer of CTV publishers who are now like releasing apps and coming on board. And what we're seeing is that marketplace is expanding rapidly. And I think we're only at the kind of first iteration, almost the first wave of kind of this CTV app ecosystem. So at the moment, it's all about kind of content and what you want to watch. But at Samsung, we know that our TVs are used for kind of far more than just watching content. It's over lockdown, it was a fitness device that was enabling people to exercise in their own homes through apps. It's also gaming's really important. We see a big increase in the amount of kind of consoles that are being connected. The kind of time spent gaming is increasing. And also kind of things about recipes for food kind of creation and cooking. So I think the TV is kind of being used for a lot more, and we're only really at the very start of that kind of journey of the app ecosystem and looking if it can replicate something that happens with mobile, that could happen within Programmatic. I think that's a really interesting space. And I think one thing that could lead to, we don't really see it at the moment, but say for CTV, like an open marketplace, how would that look for CTV? Is that something we could see in the next couple of years, maybe?
Yeah, I always kind of describe TV as being like just your mobile phone on steroids hanging off the wall.
It's interesting though that you use the comparison to mobile, because I would actually use the comparison to digital out of home. And if you, obviously, we don't want another pandemic, we don't want another lockdown in order to shift money more from linear TV across into connected TV. But the advancements that we saw in Programmatic in a channel that was traditionally specialist, off-platform, big media buys, IO based, because of the actual circumstances that we were all facing, was huge. Like the advancements when it came to standards creations, the advancements from a technology perspective, the creation of the impression multiplier, that actual sort of coming together as an industry in order to keep one of those channels alive. It'd be interesting to see actually how fast Programmatic within CTV goes when we don't have that added push of are arguably being forced to try and figure out how to have the money shift across. But completely agree with you that the TV is the central point, the home focus, isn't it? It's the focal point in the living room, and it is more than just a TV. It's used for so many other things.
Yeah. And I definitely think that in terms of market development for CTV, the announcement of Netflix to start showing ads, having an ad-supported tier, Disney Plus, the room to be launching later this year as well. And I think that's only going to benefit the whole kind of CTV kind of ecosystem. And no doubt, Netflix will bring on brands who hadn't considered CTV before until Netflix launched. I think everyone can benefit within that CTV area, that everyone will kind of benefit out of that.
Not sure it's £65 CPM.
There are some issues, teething problems that need to be ironed out, and one of them is around the CPM. But I think it is good for the CTV kind of whole ecosystem to have someone like Netflix there, and some of those SVOD partner platforms that have now realised they need kind of.
That's what Programmatic allows. It allows those brands that couldn't afford to do TV suddenly to try TV, give it a bash.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting you saying with new brands coming into the space, like the turning point for us is being able to actually measure it consistently against linear TV. In the last 2-3 years, probably every campaign we've run on CTV, we've measured incremental reach against the linear audience, and being able to actually prove that to a brand is what gets them over the edge. It gets them spending, it gets them in the ecosystem, and then they see the other benefits as well.
Great, yeah, I think that measurement piece is definitely key, isn't it? Well, we've just discussed how Programmatic has enabled efficiencies across various media channels, mainly CTV in this model, and the key strides that have been made. But what do you think are the biggest innovations and advancements in this space? So which channels and formats should we be focusing on in the Programmatic space? I'm going to start with you on this one, perhaps you can give us something around the measurement piece.
I think definitely CTV is kind of in some ways still very much in a development phase. I think it's something we'll continue to watch, and I think as we've seen that rise in investment, a lot of the innovations and drive we have seen certainly off the back of the pandemic, the growth of adoption in the space, but yeah, it is moving into those next steps of how you really measure those environments, what do you want to get out of those environments. It has so much more opportunity than perhaps linear did in the past, so there's also that balance I think touched on, clients understanding the incremental reach, the incremental audiences, but then once you're in this much more digital ecosystem, what other measurement can you look at? What else is interesting? And I know certainly from DoubleVerify being in this sort of space, measurement, CTV is definitely an area that we are continuing to look at, continue to understand. How do we get signals from what is quite a different environment? And I think we are going to continue to see more of those sorts of environments come into the digital ecosystem, which have perhaps traditionally been more linear. And I think we've touched on things like gaming as well, and other areas that are a bit of a, in some ways, in addition to the CTV space as well.
It's complex. Every single channel is different. Yet from a programmatic standpoint, we want it all to be completely the same when it comes to the way that we're measuring, the way that we're transacting. And if you are really looking at things from a true omni-channel perspective, you want to know how each individual channel is actually amplifying or dragging down another particular channel. But at the end of the day, as you mentioned, Frank, you just mentioned that linear TV is not measured in that way. So I sometimes do wonder if we're trying to shoehorn and force all these new channels into having one standardization of measurement, where in actual fact, they are actually different. And we should be a little bit more cognizant of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I think it's interesting with the emerging channels, as new channels come into play, they don't always work in the same way, right? So CTV is a great example where everyone now is so used in traditional programmatic display online video for header bidding and everything competing at the same time. That really doesn't happen in the CTV space, right? It's still, in a lot of cases, based on a waterfall. There's no kind of uniform way of everyone bidding on the same inventory or the same impression. It's seeing how that's going to develop and how you actually have to, as a buyer, work in that space then. It's much more about PMP. I know that you mentioned, could we have an open marketplace? I guess that's one of the hurdles that we have to address as an industry.
Yeah, definitely. I think the open marketplace, CTV at the minute, I know we're talking a lot about CTV. CTV at the minute, the impressions that are flowing through the market across the UK, across Europe, it probably doesn't warrant itself at the moment. It's not of a particular size where we need an open marketplace for it, because we can cope, all the impressions that are there are more or less being sold I think you guys probably see a decent volume of impressions. You're sold. The broadcasters, the BVOD partners, ITV, Channel 4, Sky, they don't need to work with anybody else. They're pretty confident that they can sell the impressions that they have as well. So I think it's only when we get to a point, and it is going to be that decline of linear TV, the continued growth of streaming, we get to a point where we're going to have so many impressions available that the open marketplace could become.
There's also an element of trust, though. I think there's a deep-rooted mistrust when it comes to having to buying CTV in an open marketplace. Now, I'm not saying whether or not that perception is grounded in any truth, but certainly all of the conversations that we tend to have with brands is that there is this perception that CTV open marketplace can't, it's brand, it's not safe. They prefer to do the packaging. Open marketplace is available from all the different SSPs, certainly that we're connected to. I do think there needs to be a shift in either some more white papers, IS, DoubleVerify with regards to the level of brand safety controls that can be in place for CTV, or there just needs to be that shift in perception, I think, before we'd be able to have a true open marketplace.
I think it's one of those things that fraud obviously follows money. So CTV being a tighter ecosystem, often more expensive CPMs. So there is that understandable balance of people being a bit cautious, but yeah, like I said, working with the right partners, even in programmatic space, even in open exchange, and whether that is working with the verification partners to filter out that fraud, or again working with SSPs and other platforms that have platform-wide integrations and doing the due diligence there. There's plenty of opportunities for fraud to be filtered out, and like you say, finding ways to make the end purchasers, planners feel more confident in that environment.
I guess it's not just brand safety and everything about emerging channels and how to make that consistent. It's about consistent buying methods to how do you actually find that audience across all the channels that you're buying across. And I think like a big thing for us over the last year or so has been a big investment area, has been the supply side data activation and enablement, basically. And there's two benefits, right? To the buyer, we enhance the value of that impression. It's more valuable to them. It is better, essentially. And then to the publisher, right, they get a higher CPM because it's more valuable to the buyer. It's how we can tie all of that data together. And again, it's looking at things in a uniform way. All right, they're all different channels, but hopefully we can then look at that truly omni-channel perspective from that single access point for planning, buying, measuring, everything.
GDPR really doesn't help.
Yes.
Yeah, the omni-channel is the dream, but I think going back to what you said, Alice, and you, Paul, it's all the different emerging channels have their own way. The most extreme is probably audio, right, where you can't actually see anything, and it's usually in your pocket. So something like a footfall analysis tends to work quite well because you're moving around. So with the final question, so I feel like there's never a panel without some sort of prediction. So it's like, will we be this time next year or 5 years time? So this is going to be no different. We'll have a little prediction here, but let's keep it a bit closer to home. So how do you see Programmatic evolving over the next, say, 6 to 12 months? Let's go this week. So start with you, Alice, and then we can open it up to the audience.
I think it's definitely going to grow. Obviously, that's a very broad statement to make. I think what we're probably going to see more of is changes with regards to buying methods. We've had various different changes, quite big changes, I think, that's happened in the industry in the last sort of 12 months, with DSPs starting to go more direct to publishers, and SSPs now making a more sort of direct paths directly for the publisher, directly to the advertiser, but still having it take place within that sort of programmatic ecosystem, and arguably actually providing more choice, because you're not necessarily saying this is the only buying or selling path you have. We're now opening up another path that could potentially be more beneficial. So I think that's probably going to be the next sort of 6 to 12 months. I think we're going to see that evolve quite heavily.
Yeah, right on cue with one of our recent launches, which is great. But I think from our perspective, like the vast majority of spend that comes through our platform is always still going to come from DSPs, right? Or we're always going to partner with them. They're always going to own that kind of biddable side of things. With something like Clearline that we recently launched, there's very specific use cases that agencies and broadcasters were requesting. So as an example, if a broadcaster has a load of data, but the agency wants to programmatically still get the benefits of a programmatic workflow, the broadcaster doesn't want to release that data into the whole of the ecosystem. this is a great method and solution for that, right? Once you've got broadcasters and like then using the programmatic workflow, there's actually an opportunity for them to say, oh, maybe I'll try biddable, maybe I'll see what the actual value of this impression is. And then we fully expect that to go back to running through the DSP as well. So actually, yeah, a huge opportunity on that side. I think one thing to add as well that we've seen in the last, certainly the last few months, but moving forward as well, is agencies and advertisers actually adopting supply side technology to, not for buying at all, but actually to curate their own inventory. When they want to see the whole ecosystem, they want to have their DSP for buying, they want to have SSP tech basically for working with their publishers and build out their own marketplace. And then they can see they've got full visibility, right, over everything that's happening then, and they've got full transparency over everything, and they can pass on those benefits to the advertisers as well.
Yeah, similar points really. I definitely see from speaking to the buy side that they're keen to work with fewer and fewer partners. So I touched on what we've spoken about there. So I definitely see both sides working with fewer partners, consolidated really about who they're working with. And then that's leading into what Frank was touched about as well. So the agency marketplaces across, although the agency marketplaces as a concept is not new, I think across the UK and EU for CTV, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they roll out, because it definitely feels that agencies want to be a lot closer to publishers than what they have been traditionally. And like you said, picking a partner who they're going to work with and working closely maybe with one partner in one market. That might not be the same partner in each market, and they might need multiple partners in different markets, depending on where someone's strong. But it definitely feels that agency marketplaces are going to be, over the next, say, sort of year or two, are going to be one of the predominant ways that CTV inventory is going to be transacted. And then finally, the growth really, AVOD partners like what Samsung had with TV Plus, we're only seeing usage increasing, more people are watching, more people are streaming content. The time they're actually in the app is increasing as well. And then when you add bundling Netflix, Disney Plus on top of that, you see an explosion growth of CTV growing impressions.
Yeah, I think I agree, definitely. The development of CTV is exactly what we expect to see in the next sort of year, 5 years. I think touching on this growth of trading it programmatically, more of these players in the market, I think we'll start to see more standardization, more granularity, more data to transact on, and what that looks like. I think one of the interesting things in CTV and potentially in audio as well is looking at that granularity. People who are interested in getting down to like more content level things like Netflix, if you trust it as a general brand, it's quite an exciting space. It's quite good, but not every brand wants to be on every content that's in there. Not every movie or TV show is appropriate. So finding those ways that people can start transacting at programming level, targeting and things like that, I think will be a really exciting space. And I think there's some people who maybe going to wait till that's available before they really ramp up those things. But I think obviously that's where P&P deals and pieces where it should be a little bit more one-to-one transactional, but for it to really start to grow into that more open exchange, I think we're going to see that develop. People are going to be really interested in understanding more granularity as it matures.
Great. So from what I gather, Programmatic brings more efficiencies, more choice, and over the next 6 to 12 months, there'll be an explosion in marketplaces and audiences, especially around Netflix, and new advertisers coming into Netflix at £65 CPM. But yeah, are there any questions from the audience?
Brilliant. That was a fantastic discussion. Oh, we have. Okay, so we've got questions online and in the room. So yeah, if you want to ask a question, please wave at myself or Helen. I just want to say a big thank you first to the panel for a really interesting conversation. So we have a quick round of applause for the question, which is come from our online audience. What channel, I think I know the answer to this, what channel will drive programmatic growth in 2024?
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Like just to add, like Paul's mentioned it already, but seeing how the global broadcasters are now moving from the US into EMEA, you've got DAZN, you've got Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, loads of them, right? It's going to be interesting to then see how the local broadcasters then react, perhaps start opening up a little bit more to trade a bit more programmatically. It could be a really interesting space.
Yeah, definitely. I think what would be really good is if, say, the UK broadcasters like to look at some of their European friends and decided to clean. We can open up to other kind of third-party demand. Who else can help us? We'll build out our demand and audiences and stuff. And I think if the UK could follow somewhere like France, where the French broadcasters are plugged into lots of SSPs. They're really open, and it's a much open and richer kind of ecosystem for buying CTV over there than say what it is over here, where it's very much walled gardens and you must use our platform to buy.
Interesting. And have we got any questions from the audience? Don't be shy. Get involved. Any non-CTV questions? Yes. Sorry. Do you want to say who? Do you want? Shall I come up, give you the microphone? There you go.
Hello. There we go. I'm Stefan from Xaxis, and you guys have talked a lot about growth within programmatic. I just wanted to ask, where do you think this growth is coming from? Do you think it's going to be incremental budgets from clients, or do you reckon it's going to kind of cannibalize from traditional channels? And if so, which ones?
Go first, if you want. Personally, I think it's going to start cannibalizing from linear TV. It's definitely going to be shifting across, and that's probably the main place it's going to come from. Really.
From what I've seen within the agency landscape, it varies agency group by agency group, and sometimes it depends where programmatic sits within the agency. So there's the decentralized kind of programmatic teams, and they've got maybe different control of different budgets, and they can pull budgets from social or other digital formats. But then some of the marketplaces that Frank and I mentioned as well, like the marketplace is an extension almost of the AV team, and they're almost like an AV solution. So it's natural that as linear TV viewing declines, that budget that is linear or AV is being split between linear and CTV sort of marketplaces, and that's where we're seeing at Samsung quite a bit of growth coming through at the moment.
Yeah, I can add to that as well. So I think what will be interesting is as new things like attention measurement and optimizing towards high attention units becomes more prevalent. I know there's a few partners out in the market that we work with as well, but it will be interesting to see how that starts to shift. It's almost like I view it as viewability 2.0. That was huge kind of 6-7 years ago, and now attention's a big thing. And it's really going to be, which channel is actually driving more attention, or which placement, ad placement, or whatever it is. So there's no doubt in my mind programmatic's going to grow. It's just, there might be a little bit of taking from each other, but the big growth is definitely going to come from things like linear or out of home, moving into digital out of home.
The one thing to add to that was, like, definitely the bulk of that budget is probably going to come from the linear TV, but I think you will see some growth from people who maybe traditionally not had the money to get into linear TV. That's where maybe they've had test budgets. They might start seeing, actually, this is a new channel. There might be some new budgets there. I expect it won't be anything quite with the linear opportunity. I've worked in video in previous roles, and I remember that was always the piece. That was what we were trying to get, was trying to steal the linear budget. So it's definitely a big part of the pie, but there are other opportunities there.
Great. So it's an entry into TV advertising potentially, as well as potentially a more cost-efficient way of supplementing your linear buy. We've probably got enough time for one more question from the audience. Don't fight. Yes. Can I give you the microphone?
Hi, I'm Ash from Xaxis. There was a recent quote from one of the media clients, of one of the clients of the conference, which was from Richard Brook at Unilever, saying if you can measure it, you can buy it. I think the biggest struggles of most of the clients is being able to invest in CTV is the measurement question. I think, as you mentioned earlier, that measurement isn't the same across linear TV and CTV. So my question is, what are the new measurement opportunities that are coming up that excite you as a panel, which you think will help us move that needle from traditional TV buying to CTV buying?
So I think the main measurement, and by the way, I actually was at a conference with Richard for 3 days talking about this very question back in November, and we did not come up with a solid answer for it. But the main measurement has to be showing that you're reaching incremental audiences, that you're able to amplify the buy that you're doing, that you're not duplicating the eyeballs that you're hitting. And that actually is available today, but it's available in pockets, and it's available very much in walled gardens, which doesn't make it an efficient way for a brand such as Unilever to be able to buy across all the different sort of publishers and media owners that they want to. So I think the thing that needs to happen is there needs to be a little bit of the breaking down of walls and a little bit of a coming together to allow things such as incremental reach to be measured across multiple players.
I'll probably second that as well. Incremental reach. At Samsung, we're able to use some of the screen level data that we have around linear TV viewing to overlay that onto our kind of CTV buy, so we can help target unexposed audiences or kind of underexposed audiences, maybe they haven't had the same sort of frequency exposure that you wish that we can help deliver. But yeah, definitely the kind of biggest kind of metric or the biggest piece of measurement that we do is around helping advertisers understand what incremental reach they've driven by running with TV Plus. And like Alice said, that we can only measure that within Samsung households. So of the CTV market, probably Samsung's about 30% smart TVs. So we've got about 8 to 9 million within the UK. So we could give you an accurate representation of what's happening within that. So it's then the collaboration that may need to happen out there. LG doing their part, Samba.
I do think that what Richard was talking about, though, was about his Unilever. It's about people physically buying the Unilever products. How can you actually tie it all the way back to whether or not it's driving sales uplift? And I think that's a long time coming, really, to be honest. In Europe, I don't think anyone has truly cracked it right now. Whether or not panel-based is the way to go through companies such as IRI and others, or whether or not at some point we're going to be able to more greatly connect the dots between those households that have TVs and actually come into the digital landscape and be able to track it a little bit more. But
yeah, I think there's a lot of collaboration that needs to happen, not just with Unilever, with like actual purchase data, shopping data, like where like Unilever aren't selling too many products direct to consumer. There's kind of retailers that need to come on board as well. So it's much greater collaboration needs to happen and sharing of data as well, which is great.
Awesome. So it sounds like this conversation could go on for some time.
We can spend 3 days talking.
3 days.
We not find a solution.
Sadly, we don't have 3 days, but that was fantastic. Great conversation. It feels to me like it's about incrementality and it's about outcomes. I think everything is becoming more and more looked at through the lens of kind of ROI.